especially in sales, because like, people say sales is a numbers game, but to some degree, when you're having those skills and you're improving constantly, it's inevitable that if you're hopping on these, like, let's say 8 closing calls a week, you close 1, the following week you might close 2, you might close 3, you're going to get to that 10K stage, right? And the skills stay with you much longer. So when I was selling $4,000 a month partnerships, it was like, it was tough, whatever, so on and so forth. Now we do $60,000 a year contracts. Not $4,000 a month, $60,000 a year. And the stakes are bigger, but I've learned those skills from being at 5K to 10K a month. And they've grown on. And to quote you from our last podcast, I mentioned you before being like, should you always sell your own stuff? And you said, no, you should learn skills. You should learn the sales. And then that will stay with you long enough, right? And someone who learns sales will never go broke again, right?
100%. Yeah. Once you learn sales, that's the beginning of the end. Like, you're not going to be broke. You're going to learn a lot about life in general and being able to paint the life and the reality that you want. Sales is much more than just selling something to someone. Sales is your interactions with people. It's your ability to carve your way through life to get what you want. There's very few times I don't get what I want in day-to-day interactions, because I understand people. I know how to talk to you. I know how to make you tick. I know how to get the things that I want, and it makes my life a joy. It makes my life go the way I want. A lot of people get down. They're like, nothing ever goes my way. That's because you don't understand how to make other people tick.
How do you do it?
There's so many different things. So I'll give you an example. One that's quite raw and you can understand instantly, but most people get completely the wrong way. If you tell somebody they're something, they become it. But the majority of us tell the people that are negative influences on our lives that they are negative influences on our lives. So if you tell someone who's always late and you brand them as the late person, they will continue to be late. If you redecide how you're going to speak to them and talk to them, and you breed something different into them, so you start basically telling them that they're super organized, super punctual, you speak to them in that way, and you just reward the very good things that they do, even if it's a few, even if they turn up early one time, and the rest of the time they're late, and you tell them on that time, man, it's awesome that you're early. Great work on getting here on time today. It breeds a little something in their life. Most people are so used to people, if they've got a negative trait, if they're the grumpy person or the negative person, they're so used to people saying that they become it. And if you can flip it on its head, even if it's not true, even if you have to grit your teeth to say it, and you brand someone as something else, and you just take the very small positive parts of their personality and you repeat them back to them, they will become that person. You'll watch them flower and flourish. Once you've done that to someone, you essentially now have somebody who will do anything for you because you've allowed them to become a better version of themselves. And that's just that's one very, very simple part of sales and psychology that I use on a fairly regular basis, is just ignoring the fact that you'd like to tell someone they're bad at something and find the very few things they do well and encourage those things, and they will flourish before your eyes into a new person.
It's positive reinforcement, right? Versus just, and I think that's a big fall to just everything online, is the fact that you're never often told when you've done something well, you're often told when you do something wrong.
Yeah.
And whether it's teachers, when you're a kid, professors, scorecards, gradings in school, whatever, no one says when you've done well or well-ish. It's always highlighting the fails and the reds and the negatives and the lost clients and so on and so forth.
I saw it so visually myself, because I had a teacher that just said, and I didn't even know if he was being legit or true about this, or whether he said it to everyone because it was the kind of guy he was, but there's a teacher called Mr. Zadie of my secondary school, who in my first year of secondary school said I had a fairly bad parent-teacher conference where most teachers were like, yeah, he's an arrogant son of a bitch, and he's like, he doesn't listen and he talks too much. And then this one teacher, Mr. Zadie, said that I was incredibly talented in filmmaking, the most talented student he'd ever seen in media. He was like, he's an absolute superstar in media. He's so talented in filmmaking, and his love for film. He's one of the most incredible students that I've ever seen. And I don't know if that was true at the time, but that bred me into being just an absolute star student in his media class. There was I would never do anything wrong in his class. I would try my absolute hardest because he'd put that belief and that faith in me that had turned me into that person. And then I'd had it where I'd tried it in other classes where I tried to be good, and people had just found the bad parts, the negative parts, and I'd become the villain. I find it in myself so easily. I'm just the same as everybody else. If somebody encourages me in something, I'll become the hero. If they're negative to me, I'll become the villain.
And even if they don't say something bad, right, you just highlight something. So I can give you an example of that. So when I was younger, I was so shit at school. Just like didn't want to go to school as like a kid. So I was often like sick, but not really actually sick, right?
Yeah.
And because of that, I just lacked like some basic education, right? I was out for exams and so on and so forth. So I did like a test for dyslexia, and they said it was like positive for dyslexia, whatever the fuck it is, right? So they were like, Darren is bad at English, he's bad at grammar, he's bad at writing.
Yeah.
So from the ages of like 7 all the way up in secondary school, I just had that negative thought.
Yeah.
And then from secondary school, then because I had that, I didn't try at English, I didn't try it, so on and so forth. So I was at the bottom of those classes. But now I write every single day. I wrote every single day for 3 years, bear in mind. All of my sales comes from sales letters or emails or posts or whatever, right? And I would say that I'm better at writing or as good as writing as most people.
Yeah.
Right? And I would also say that I'm not even dyslexic. I'm actually being serious. I don't even think I was. I think I was just lazy.
Yeah.
And that was something that was told to me at like 7 years old. And even though I'm good at like maths and so on and so forth, I just thought it was interesting because I just grew into my brain thinking I wasn't good at something. When to this day, I don't even think we could probably test it.
Yeah.
You know, effectively.
That's the key. That right there is the key. Like you just become who you meant to be. Like,
and I don't mean to interrupt you, sorry, but I remember I was so self-conscious of this that Elise used to read my posts before they go out for how many years? Maybe like a year. So about a year and a half. And then for the last year and a half, she hasn't.
Yeah.
And then about a week ago, I was like super tired. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning. I was put up a post and I was like, can you just read this super quickly? And she was like, that's like the best copy. She's like, I've seen in like so long. And I was like, oh, I just did that like freehand. And she was like, what the fuck? She was like, I used to review like the shittest text ever from you like 2 years ago. But it's interesting, right?
Yeah.
You just lock yourself away, you get better at something. Yeah. And the positive reinforcement for me was like sales, views, downloads, clicks, whatever, right?
So I think the beautiful thing is you just have to decide who you want to be. That's the most fundamental thing. It's like decide who you want to be. Don't listen and wipe clean any of the negative beliefs that have been enforced on you by other people and their limits for whatever reasons they have. And decide who you're going to be and then become that person. And don't let anybody get in your way when it comes to doing those things. And your life will start to become much more beautiful.
This was a short clip from Kickoff Sessions podcast. Go check out the full episode right up here.